I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, May 1st, 2023 to order. First order of business is pledge allegiance. Charles, would you?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public forum. Prior to the meeting, we had discussions with Cynthia and David Dahmer, and they're looking to read a statement into the record relative to the Eversource capital project. Come on up and name and address for the record, please.
My name is Cynthia Dahmer. I live at 440 Great Hill Road in North Guilford. Honorable Selectmen, our trees are suffering. Chestnut trees died of blight, elm trees of Dutch elm disease, red pines of blister rust, woolly adelgids killed the hemlocks, gypsy moths and tent caterpillars killed and weakened many trees due to defoliation. Ash trees are all dead from the emerald ash borer. The sugar maples are affected negatively by the warming climate. And lastly, the beech trees are being attacked by a nematode for which there is yet no cure. All of these losses have led to a lack of biodiversity in Connecticut forests. The point here is that every healthy tree should be treated as a precious resource. When we lose power, Eversource has a recorded message stating the cause is tree limbs contacting wires. The question I want answered is, how many times is the outage caused by dead trees versus live, healthy trees? Eversource has not trimmed the trees on Great Hill Road for at least 5 years or more. During that time, all the ash trees have died and are falling down unexpectedly, creating a public hazard. The case in point was Saturday, April 22nd, when a big dead tree came down across Route 80, blocking both lanes. Thank God no one was driving underneath it at that time. And many of our sugar maples have major branches that need trimming as well. Can we not compromise by cutting down the dead trees, trimming branches, and leaving healthy mature trees alive to shade our homes and streets in the increasingly hot summers? I urgently request a public hearing on this issue. Further, all of the homeowners on Great Hill Road and north on Route 77 should be informed that the increase of the height and voltage of the lines will affect them as well. The 1.5 miles in the Eversource press release on April 26th is just the first phase in an overall plan which Eversource has not yet shared with the public. All the more reason for a public hearing. In our own Town of Guilford Standards, section 241-16, Scenic Roads states clearly that a public hearing is required if the scenic road is bordered by mature trees that are proposed to be removed. Also, we have been told that these 45-foot poles are now to be standard in Connecticut. What will that mean for our town green and the historic district if Eversource wants to cut down the trees there, applying the same standards as they are implementing on this capital project in North Guilford? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else looking to address the board in public forum? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3, and that's to approve minutes. The minutes of April 17th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second. Any comments, questions, suggested changes, etc.?
I think Aaron had sent in something to Emily on that, on the minutes.
Emily, you mean?
I don't know. Let's see, what did she say? Tracy, she emailed Tracy.
Right. I think that was in respect to, we were going to adopt the changes. We already adopted the changes that Aaron sent in. Once they were sent in, they became official part of the record. These are the minutes. I think we probably actually did that, if I'm not mistaken. Good. All right. Any other comments or questions on this?
Just can't jump in.
Okay. None. Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici?
I will abstain. I wasn't there.
Those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries. Item 4, Board of Ed Director of Operations Facilities, Cliff Gurnham. Cliff, good morning. We're here to discuss and take possible action to award moving services for the Cox Media renovation project. Good morning, Cliff.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So this is the last piece that we need approval for the project this summer for the Cox Media Center. This is the services for moving all the books and media information from the actual library into the cafeteria for storage while we replace the bookcases, furniture, and do the renovation work. This work is under state contract, and we provide the state contract information. The Standing Building Committee has reviewed the proposal, and they have recommended moving forward with Meyer Inc. in the amount of $17,222.
Excellent. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Comments or questions? This is the last piece of this one?
Correct. Yep.
This is no way that we can do this with existing, I mean, it's simply moving books from one part of the building to another for $17,000. Were there any alternatives explored? That's a lot of books.
It's really too large of a project for us to do in-house. We'd have to pull all our custodians or something to do it. And then we just don't have the expertise in moving that number of books and keeping them organized, where they come in with a crew, they have a whole system of doing it. So they're much more efficient than we would be trying to do it in-house. So both move in and then back into the new locations is a little more complicated than we'd like to take on ourselves. Plus, we have enough other projects throughout the district that our staff will be working on that we really don't want to add it to them. So last time we did this, we did the same thing when we did the carpet replacement. We had a company come in and move all the books as well. It works much better than us trying to do it ourselves.
And Cliff, they're moving, are they moving out bookshelves as well? The furniture, the bookshelves that the books are sitting on, are they going into the cafeteria as well?
Nope, they provide boxes and carts to move all the books and media stuff on. It stays in those boxes and carts until it's ready to be moved back. They
Okay.
provide all that as part of this fee. And then it's actually our crew that is taking down the bookcases and disposing of the bookcases. And then the company will come in and install all the new bookcases for us.
Okay.
So does the 17,222, interesting number, does that include moving them out and then back in?
Correct. Yes, it does. Yep. And any materials needed like the boxes and carts to move it.
Got it. Anything further? Any other questions? Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici.
Aye.
Those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you.
Item 5, Library Director Rob McCool. Good morning, Rob.
Good
We're
morning.
we're here for a discussion and on budget changes for the library roof replacement project. Rob and I have had a couple of conversations on this, so this is not a surprise to me, but it may be to the balance of the board. Rob?
I did bring it up in 2013.
So
We did a
Well, sort of.
good
So
morning, Rob.
there's been some evolution of this project for a couple of reasons. It was first, I think Sandy first placed the capital request while she was still director for $100,000 or 99.5 based on a quote from Tom Gins, who had been helping us with our roofs for many, many years. We knew that it could probably be a little over that. This was for a faux slate product. Now,
Morning, Angela Carruthers.
Sorry. Then I went before the HDC and they rejected this initial plan. And they cited the architectural, I'm quoting from their response, the architectural integrity of the original facade, its prominent location on the green, and its civic importance. Now, they didn't completely dismiss the possibility of a non-slate product, but they were very strongly in favor of slate. And it also, my own thinking sort of evolved a little bit as I realized there were more and more people interested in keeping this slate on the green. And I started reflecting on it. I'm almost always coming here with very fiscally conservative requests. In this case, this is a 100-year project. This is the 1933 roof. I will never be coming before you with a similar project of this magnitude and expense. So the board became interested as well in preserving slate. So I did a little more research after that rejection and spoke with a local company who gave us a quote that we knew was a little bit under, which turns out a lot under. But what was interesting is the difference in price between slate and the non-slate products was not as much as we originally thought. It was only a little over $20,000. So then the board was willing to commit their own funds to making this difference to make slate happen. Then in further discussions with Steve Nydorf, this is where my ignorance comes into play. Like, we've done some roof projects in the past. I knew this would be a little more complicated. I didn't know it was going to require a $17,000 architectural plan drawn up. That's my bad. So we have paid for that project with library funds that existed. Unfortunately, what they determined was this was a $370,000 project. Now that's the conservative, architect's plans, but that's way over what we had initially planned. So I guess my question is, do I run this back to the whole capital process again, or is there a way to figure this out now? Given, I think it's a good idea to be just committed to the slate roof and just do this one project that will then sort of buy us. We'll all be dead before the next director is trying to deal with this roof again.
Changing? Why do we need an architectural plan?
Ask him.
Rob, Charles just asked a question. Why do we need architectural services? That's, if I'm not mistaken, we use roofing specialists, engineering specialists on every project that we do a re-roof.
Well, I mean, is it a repair or is it a remodel?
Rob,
I came to the board with 3 quotes, and we picked Silver, Petroselli and Associates. There is a little bit of work on the gutters. There was a hazardous materials study done as well because it's so old. So there were a few components, and this was just at Steve Nydorf's advice. He gave me several companies that are used by the town, and we went out to bid on that, and this was the one that we selected for the project.
So it sounds like it's not necessarily architectural changes that we're doing. It's just
architectural service.
It's management of whatever repairs we're doing to replace it. So then I would ask the question of the company that does the roofing. They do not supply these services as part of their process. I mean, they're the ones that do slate roofing.
Janice?
I can speak to it a little bit. I've done a number of roof replacement projects in the past. When you're operating in this realm of public monies and having to go out to bid, it's really important to have really nailed down plans of details and requirements and the hazardous material testing done ahead of time for any remediation that's needed. So that's where the architectural services really come in. Particularly if you're adding in some gutter work with these old buildings, they can be a little complicated. And you want to make sure you're getting pricing that's comparable from each company who's doing the work, because it's spelled out in the details of the plans, as opposed to they're assuming this and they're assuming that. You're going to be spending a lot of money on a roof, and you need every detail nailed down in the plan set.
So Rob, the board used library endowment funds or other funds to pay Silver Petroselli, is that correct?
That was actually just library funds that existed, a little bit of maintenance, and then some special gifts funds from donations. But what they are committed to is $30,000 in those funds to contribute to this project.
In addition, in the future.
Yeah.
So big picture, what are we talking about for numbers here? The total project and the additional amount.
Well, the $100,000 was already in the capital campaign. Then the board would contribute 30. So I'd be seeking a maximum of $240,000 of additional funds.
But what is the total?
370,000 was the estimate from the architect, from the planners.
What, okay, and the roof?
That's,
That's the architectural planning.
370 is everything together.
Architectural planning, what is the cost of the roof?
it is included, the roof. is-
Oh, I'm sorry. The 17, I'm not including the 17 in that figure. The 17 is already paid for. What I'm asking for is the roof project in its entirety is quoted at 370,000.
And we budget 100.
Yeah.
Bob, what's the timeline for that?
I completely. missed
Well, that's what I'm here to discuss. If really, we could go on this right now and go out to bid, tomorrow we're prepared to do that. If I have to go back to the capital process again, I mean, the roof is okay. There's a little leak, but this is not like a ticking time bomb or anything. We can wait a little while. But ideally, if this is approved, then I would go back to the firm. We would go out to bid almost immediately, hoping to do it late this summer, early fall before the winter.
And is the biggest jump between the $100,000 estimate 5 years ago or whenever it was, and now this 300 is the biggest jump labor costs, or is it materials or some combination?
Seemed to be everything was considerably higher. The inflation certainly had a big part of it. I think the complexity of the project we underestimated that with the past quotes. They didn't do quite as granular of a study of the roof before submitting their quotes. We had 3 other quotes prior to the firms being hired.
So it's all the above, right? The slate itself is a different, is more
Yes.
expensive than, yeah, but I think you said there was only about a 20% uplift on slate versus the other traditional roofing product.
Yeah, the local firm that we hired to compare those two gave me 2 quotes, one for slate, one for faux slate, of a more sophisticated product. And the difference was only $21,000 between the two. That's when the board kind of said, let's go for slate. If it's really that much, it's not that much of a difference. And then and my thinking changed as well as I became, much more thinking about the long-term building. Whereas when we first were placing this, we were still kind of in the mindset of the bad economy and everything. But now the board's got more funds than they did at the time this was placed. And I think the board is more interested in preserving slate based on our last few discussions. So we'd be seeking to do this in a way that's going to last for hopefully another 90, 100 years.
Great. Okay. So the request is an additional 240,000 because we've got the 100,000 original, the 30,000 from the board. We need an additional 240. Is that, am I reading this right?
Yes.
MJ, any idea on possible options here?
Yes, we have money in our committed fund balance for specifically 4 facilities that would cover this amount plus some.
The other idea is we could revisit the entire capital section of the budget and reprioritize some things.
Number around.
Anything's changed. The other
I mean, the amount of this change is actually greater than some of the other individual projects.
Yes.
That 100,000 was like a placeholder from when I started out in 2013, I mean,
I can
and we were
appreciate that.
thinking about the
We are
faux slate
talking.
at the time. And all the things that he mentioned, we didn't take into consideration of hazardous materials, gutters. And of course, the prices have gone up. I mean, I'm a little stunned myself that it's jumping from 100,000 to 370. I never thought it would go that high, but I think I can sort of understand why.
Yeah, I have to admit, my jaw dropped when I heard that number because I did have 3 quotes, one of which was fairly recent. So I'm a little stunned by the change.
Well, I'd like to comment that, Rob, you really stand out as always coming to us with fiscally conservative proposals. And I've always really appreciated that. So it just seems like a good time to mention that.
This is the one time I feel like there's a little bit of a sentimental. I mean, I think of Edith Nettleton, and it's a little bit of a different approach. I am usually really trying hard to keep things under control, and with the help of the Friends and the Guilford Library Association makes that possible. But this is sort of a once in a generation
Breaking his
thing.
record.
Yeah.
Rob, do you think any of these changes are the result of timing? I mean, we all hear about the building trades and how it's difficult to hire contractors and materials and all of that type of thing. Do you think any of this change is the result of timing that, because it appears that construction is at its peak demand, or whatever the words are, all of the prices of labor and material are also at their peak? Is the roof in a failing situation where it has to be done this year, or do you think any of this could be related to timing?
I think it's definitely, I mean, again, I don't have a professional opinion, but I think timing is definitely a part of it, because the figures that they were a little reluctant, the wage figures have to be current. So if we were to revisit this like a year or two now, we would, have different numbers, obviously, but I don't know that we would have drastically different numbers. So it's hard to, now, and to your question, the roof is okay. It's definitely worn, especially on the north side. And there's a small leak in the historical room, which there's been for some time, but it's only if there's a real torrential downpour, there's a little bit of a leak, and it's not near any items. But having said that, it is a 1933 roof, so it's this project needs to happen.
Yep.
It could happen a year or two from now, but I wouldn't suggest putting it off much further than that.
Well, if labor is a good, excuse me, let me finish the thought. I mean, labor is a good percentage of this, and in the public sector, once labor rates go up, they do not come down. So that's probably a high percentage. It sounds like that's a high percentage of this, so maybe that makes sense not to delay.
Also, will this be prevailing wage? So anything over 100,000, which the original quote probably did not include prevailing wage. This now, based on the size of the project now, would include prevailing wage, which is a pretty good uplift in addition. So, I like Sue's idea. Let's take a look at the capital plan. As a first, yeah. We'll put it on the agenda for next meeting. If there's any possible, also MJ, use that crystal ball and see if there's any leftover funds in any of the roofing projects that we've done that we haven't closed out.
That I already looked at.
Step ahead.
And I would only add that there's about $30,000 in the capital fund for next year for the library. And those are both projects that if they had to be put off for a year, that would be fine as well. It's not a lot, but it's a little.
Do you think there's any grants for preservation? I mean, a lot of our logic is a preservation of this building on the green and historical and everything else. I wonder if there's any grants for preservations of buildings and things like that.
Good point.
Or have they been explored?
Janice?
Circle Preservation Fund, maybe?
Yeah, we could check in with, maybe through SHPO or something, there might be some funding.
I mean, because that's what's driving the decision, really. I've always said it wasn't much difference going the other direction, so.
Well,
But still, I mean, it is preservation of a historic, well,
The
pieces of it
architect,
are historic anyway.
say that again, Jim?
the architect should have some avenues, for grants.
Right.
Usually they're pretty tuned into funding availability. As
That'd be
to, I've used steep grants for roof projects in the past.
Yeah, although I've tacitly committed to the Guilford Housing Authority
Right.
for new use of steep funds, although we could probably expand it, but it's to all roofing projects, but.
Right.
I'm just thinking of the historical spin too.
Right.
Maybe I think it's worth exploring. So.
We'll take a look at those opportunities. So, a couple weeks hence, we'll try to come up with a plan. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, item 6, Finance Director Mary Jane, 6.1, consider and take possible action to approve transfer of $29,423 from the unassigned fund balance to close out a grant project. MJ.
Yes, I'd like to preface the conversation by saying that I have gone back and reviewed all of the items in our grant funds to be sure that they were, I can't promise that I'm not going to be coming back for any in the future, but at the moment, we have funded all of the projects there, and I've closed out some of the old ones, as you know, and so we've got a really tight two different funds for grants. They're really tight now. Instead of a list like this, it's down to just a few. This particular Fund 125 has a few more. Included in 125 is also the ARPA money. So there's a lot of money in this grant fund, but there are not as many projects. So, so I'm coming back to you with this one. Sandy may know more about this than I do. We had hired, if you remember, Patrick Quinn Architects back in 2018 to do the original affordable housing feasibility study. From the digging that I've done, at that time, there was a grant potentially to be used for this project. Can't speak this morning. But unfortunately, that was either not followed through on or what, but people are new in places right now. But at the moment, I do not have grant funds to cover that project. So
I thought this was covered by a grant until this is the first that I knew that it wasn't.
Okay, the funding never came through.
Was our approval based on that grant? I mean, I don't, it's 5 years ago. I don't really.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Was our approval of this project based on receiving the grant?
Yeah, I thought this was the second step. The first step was a grant that identified places along Route 1 and the railroad for affordable housing projects. And that was definitely funded by a grant. And then the second one, although I thought Patrick was involved with NeighborWorks on this.
It's possible that there was a thought that a grant might be
Yeah.
around to cover this, which is why it was done this way.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Because I thought
Was our
Patrick
approval
only got
based on
involved
that?
in this after we selected NeighborWorks as our not-for-profit developer. So honestly, we maybe need to talk to Patrick about this.
Well,
a little
This
bit.
this was phase two of the two-phase approach.
Yeah.
First, we identified the
Right,
properties.
Right,
And second,
Was the
we said,
feasibility.
which is the feasibility,
Right.
which property was most suitable for the
Right.
development.
Right.
And this was the second piece. So
Right.
is it that, I
maybe it's
recall,
just in the wrong place. I don't know.
but I recall there were two $25,000
That's right.
grants.
And the
that
second
had
grant, I
been
was
awarded.
specifically for this, I thought. I mean, it fit the criteria.
And who was the grant coming from? Do we know?
The state of Connecticut.
Have we followed up with the state of Connecticut to make sure it's not just hung
I don't
up
know,
in
it
red
might have been
tape
through the
or-
through DOH, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I can. I just learned that we had
Yeah.
not done our part, so.
I think it warrants a little follow-up
Certainly.
with the funding source, especially because there are different parties involved with this.
Yeah.
It might have gone somewhere else, who knows?
If I'm not mistaken, the affordable housing feasibility study was done prior to 2018. Because that was,
Yeah, this is all, we've got to talk to Patrick Quinn and NeighborWorks and maybe the previous head of planning and zoning, reach out, because this sounds crazy to me. I mean, I thought we got 2 grants on this. Tracy, are you involved with those? I'm not putting you on the spot, okay, all right. I wouldn't trade it yet.
Trey, let's,
Well,
at
it's,
some-
I mean, it's already been,
Respect.
yeah, it's just a funding source, that's
All right,
all,
all right.
yes.
Trey, if we can go back and look at Board of Selectmen minutes relative to the approval process on this, where we may have identified the specific grant, when and how much, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. So how about we table this until next
Yeah.
2 weeks out?
So you're saying they've been paid?
This is, we've already paid for the feasibility study.
Okay.
This is just how it's funded.
Okay, it's in the red. And
Yeah,
we'll have to
right,
clean it up at some point.
right,
Yeah.
right, it's my last item.
Yeah,
So,
that's
Yeah,
good.
it's $30,000.
I know.
Right.
Still your last one.
it's my last item, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, theoretically, we could do this and apply grant funds to unassigned fund balance. if I'm
At this
not
point, we
mistaken,
can
right?
certainly wait. Yeah, there's no harm.
Okay.
Right.
I know you've been diligently trying. to
And
clean
that's,
this up.
I mean, but, like I always say, when we know what the issue is, it's okay. It's not knowing, or,
Yeah.
so if it sits there for a while long waiting for a grant, or some other funding,
Well,
that's
I
fine.
think it's worth finding the answers so
Absolutely.
that we can help you clear it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to table this item?
So moved.
Second.
Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici?
Aye.
Those in the room?
Aye.
Aye, that motion carried. 6.2, consider, discuss and take possible action on a resolution delegating authority to the first selectman and finance director to authorize terms and conditions of bonds, notes, and temporary notes. MJ?
So this is just our standard resolution now that the bond authorizations were approved at the referendum. This gives the authority for us to move forward and actually do the projects, apply for any funding that we might have. So it gives the first selectman and myself the authority to do that.
Any comments or questions? Is there a motion?
So,
Second. Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici?
Aye.
Those in the room?
I,
Aye, that motion carries. 6.3, consider and take possible action to increase the fee charge for the use of the town hall parking lot EV charging stations. MJ?
So as we know, I've mentioned in the past that our EV charging station was not bringing in enough money. We have changed, the last time we had this conversation, we changed the way that we charge. We were at a flat dollar rate. Now we charge per kilowatt hour. So if I take apples to apples, and on the spreadsheet I gave you, you'll see at the top is revenue that came in about $1,680. And the bottom are our utility expenses. If I take out that top one of $430, that brings expenses down to $35,000, which is apples to apples with the revenue. 3,500, I'm sorry, apples to apples with the revenue that came in. At 22 kilowatts per hour, it's about 7,600 hours. In order to cover the cost of the expense, we would be up to 47 cents per kilowatt hour. So we have been running in the red a little bit, not as much as this. Prices have gone up for electricity. But I do believe we should be increasing the cost. What's not in here is there is also a cost for us to have maintenance on the machines. I don't have that included. It's $1,000 contract a year. We've in the past we've kept that out of the equation. We have been just looking to recoup the electricity costs. But I just want to make you aware there is an additional cost that's not included here. So I'm not a user of EV, so I'm not looking at Lou.
Louis, you might have to recuse yourself here.
Well,
No, but I do have a couple questions, actually.
Yep.
So I noticed at the bottom of the cost piece, there's 3 items that are listed as Graves Avenue. What is that? And why is that listed that way?
It's just the way it was plugged in the system. I did double check with my staff that these are all charging stations. I think 36 Graves Avenue is the way it's listed, because that's the Youth and Family Services address. We normally change the wording to say EV charging, but the bill comes in as 36 Graves Avenue.
So that's just the way the spreadsheet was created.
It's just the way it was plugged into Munis those months.
Okay. And the numbers seem consistent roughly in that $400 to $500 range per month is what's getting spent, right? What the piece of information I'd be interested in is this. I mean, my sense of this being a user, a home user for the most part, but frankly, I charge here in Hamden as well. My sense is what an appropriate rate is almost as close as possible to track what a gallon of gasoline would cost. Okay, so in other words, how much at $3.50, just to pick a roughly current number, somebody should be expecting to get somewhere between 25 and 30 miles of range. Okay, now that's a couple steps of calculation because your measurements are going to be in kilowatt hours. And as I sit here, I don't know what the kilowatt hours are necessary to translate into 25 miles.
And aren't they different for different vehicles?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, the bottom,
Irrelevant to that.
the heavier vehicle you have, the less range you're going to get, right? That's just inevitable. But they give you a range, presumably based on the vehicle that you have. I suspect if you have one of these big trucks that are now coming out, and of course are being popular, Americans being Americans, I'm sure you get less range for every kilowatt hour. But that calculation should stay the same. You know, you should be paying for 25 miles worth of range, I suppose.
Lou, that discussion seems to me would be logical if we were subsidizing gas vehicles also.
Yeah, but you're not
I don't see the
subsidizing.
logic of-
Are you subsidizing? People should be paying that price.
Well, we're
That's what I'm
subsidizing
saying.
it substantially, that's the
I
whole.
mean, I have no problem
Yeah.
supplying the service, doing that service thing, because we want to encourage it. So I don't have any problem with that, but I do think the costs ought to reflect our costs.
Absolutely. And I suspect we're all saying the same thing from a different way. I'm just saying there's a piece of information that's missing. What we have here are gross expenses and gross in revenue. And it sounds like we're undercharging. Okay, but I'd be interested to know how many kilowatts. Oh, you said it actually.
7,637.72.
7,006. That's roughly per month.
That's the total,
Per month.
the total.
Since July.
6 months.
If you take the 1680 of revenue and divide it by the 22 kilowatts per hour, I came up with 7,637.
Oh, since going back to August
Correct.
on your
I
spreadsheet.
didn't do by month, I did total.
I mean, I'm not opposed to this. We should be charging more if we're not charging the right amount. I mean, I just trying to figure out a way to get there. And I also think you should include the cost.
So when we first installed it, the state subsidized it, there was no charge.
For 3
And we
years.
started charging when that went on.
Mhm.
Okay, and is this the first adjustment?
No. No, our first, we started charging $1 per hour. And for however we came up with that, and then that wasn't working for us. And we worked with ChargePoint, who is our vendor for this, and switched over to kilowatts per hour, which is where the 22 has come from. That's been a couple of years. It's been a couple of years.
And what are we charging per kilowatt?
22 cents.
And we have not changed what we're charging per kilowatt
No.
in the 2 years. Can we, is it possible with this company to simply charge per kilowatt and adjust for whatever the kilowatt cost us ongoing changes?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, can't do it.
I don't know if the
I mean, like
company's
gas
never-
changes daily.
company's never given us that option. We
Okay, so we
determine
don't
what
have
that is, but we could ask.
So then the question, I just want to continue my train of thought here. Then the
They don't
que-
know what our expense is. ChargePoint doesn't know what our expense is. They only know the revenue, and we don't pay them
Alright,
for any
so-
more than.
Okay, I understand that, and just the mechanics of it, I can
Yep.
appreciate. So then my question becomes, if we set the price now of what it is, how do we protect the town going forward? I don't really want to go another 2 years, who knows which way the rates are going, hopefully they've leveled off, but we don't know.
Well, we can,
That brings up a very good point. Last Friday, we worked with Titan Energy, who was CCM energy supplier that we've utilized for our Eversource energy contracts. Is this facility part of that, of the accounts that we listed with Eversource?
I
It
believe
should
so,
be.
but I would, yeah, I believe so, but I will double check, yeah.
Then I'm not sure how we're getting to 22 cents per kilowatt hour. Because the current contract that we have through Titan Energy with Eversource, or no, it's Constellation or whatever, is 8 cents, right?
Yeah, but
And
that's.
that's just for the charges, right? Okay, so I want to see how that plays in, right? Because we've been at about 8 cents just for the supply, right?
Mhm.
The distribution makes up the difference to the 22 cents, right?
Mhm.
So can you confirm that this account is part of that?
Sure. Yeah.
Because as of November, the kilowatt supply charges are going to be 11 cents, right? Based on the market. And that's the agreement that we signed last week.
How hard is it to change the meter? Or whatever calculates?
It's not hard at all to change the pricing.
So
Other
my-
than, we chose to be consistent so that, you know, for the residents, but
My point going forward then, so that we don't have a 2-year adjustment, you know, can we, I don't know, I guess 30 days is too much, but I mean, at least a 6-month or an annual at the most adjustment into.
yeah, I can come back
Yeah, let's.
as often as you want.
So,
Well, you
so,
wouldn't have to if we
Right.
included in a motion that just to adjust it to, you know, my suggestion is gonna be to cover our costs. Okay, not including the service charge. I'm willing to have the town help subsidize this direction with the service charge.
so can I jump back in on it?
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm going to be absolutely, completely transparent here. I think a commercial, a publicly available charging should be at least as expensive, if not slightly more, because it's a convenience to people, than what somebody would be paying at home and covering our costs. So just, I'm looking at, you know, I don't know what our total bill is if you include the transmission, but 22 cents sounds awfully low for what the town might be paying. You guys would know. I mean, my bill's 26 cents per kilowatt hour, everything included. I switched down when the rates went up, you know, I kind of locked into one of those deals. But, you know, so those should be sort of at a minimum, the starting point, which gets you to where you're trying to get, MJ. I mean, I think we should not be subsidizing the electricity piece for people. We should definitely be covering, but it doesn't sound like, I'm not positive I'm hearing that we would be doing that. I mean, if we're just increasing from 22 to 29 or whatever we're paying, are you going to close that $2,000 gap that you're showing on this spreadsheet?
It's 22 to 46.
So 46, is 46 what we're actually paying for electricity?
These numbers are correct, yes. Well.
No, I mean, what's our
I'm-
electric?
I'm not going by the electric bill, I'm going by the actual expenses here on this sheet.
Yeah, but those two things should match, shouldn't they?
Yeah,
I'm just curious what that is. That's all. I'd just be curious what we're paying for kilowatt hours.
Yeah, I
Not
don't think
opposed
we're
to this
gonna make
change.
up- We're not gonna make up the difference that we're in the hole now. You know, we're not trying to do that necessarily. Going forward, I'd like to cover our expense.
that's why I'm here. Yeah, I agree.
And why not cover the maintenance charge too? I mean, unless, if we, that would be my suggestion, to include that. See where the calculation comes out. If we have some ridiculous amount that we're charging, we could revisit it, but as a starting point.
This model's got to move to a point where anybody who has a vehicle should have availability of personal charging on their own dime, just as anybody who's got a gasoline vehicle buys their own gas every month, which you guys are all suggesting. Now, that's easier said than done. But I mean, the state and the community is addressing multi-unit housing, right? At some point, if above a certain number of units, there's going to be a certain requirement for a certain number of charging stations. I can tell you this, I know in personal experience, a new apartment complex in Madison has 4 charging pylons behind it. Building's brand new, there's 4 charging pylons, right? And I'm sure they're going to be paying a market rate. We should be paying what it costs to get there. I just kind of am interested in the numbers a little bit.
What do commercial charges cost?
More, Charlie, a lot more. You pay a
Well,
premium.
of course they do, because they got a profit margin, but I wonder what that number
I
is.
think we have an answer here.
Mike, if I may, since I have an electric vehicle, the average cost in Connecticut is 25 cents per kilowatt hour if you go to a charging station. For a supercharger, it's 41 cents. I don't believe the superchargers here, so.
And as we're talking here, it is a
Yeah,
different
but
way to look at the bills themselves. This may not be apples to apples, you know what I mean? But
And the average has got to include the subsidized one.
right.
That doesn't
And
make any
I
sense.
find it hard to believe if we went up to 26 that we would make up this difference though. That's
That's a good.
that's what's not making sense to me. So maybe it requires a little bit more digging.
Well, that's exactly the information I'm asking. I'm not sure why that wouldn't be the case. If we're charging people precisely what we're paying per kilowatt hour, those two things should zero out. And I'm not sure why that's not the case. I hate to create work, but that's interesting information.
No, but no, that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I don't know anything about EV charging, so I was a little.
Philosophically, you know where we want to go. We
Right.
just got to get to the number that works.
Yeah, it's giving me different ways to look at it. Yeah. I agree, Lou, yeah.
Would you be so kind as to send us the March 17th bills, charge point and from Eversource, so we can actually see the bills?
Oh, Matt, you just sprung it, if I can jump in. Are we paying a premium to ChargePoint? Is there any administrative fee?
Yes. 1,000, that's whatever.
Well, we're paying a service, but you're right, the difference might be the service charge to ChargePoint. I'll look at that, yeah.
Yeah, but that costs, that's part of the cost of the kilowatt. I mean, I don't mind subsidizing, I'm assuming $1,000 annually.
Correct, that's a maintenance
I
contract.
mean, to supply the station, I'm willing to subsidize that one.
I'd like to look into this one further too,
Yeah,
as well, yeah.
I'd also like to maybe dig a little further into the recent legislation, which is now requires developers to provide charging stations based on the number of parking spaces that you're adding.
Yeah, but those are commercial charges. So, they're just installations where they're building.
Right, but there may be some language in the bill that created that talks to how those costs can be recovered by the providers of the stations. Because, for instance, the new bank that's going in, it is going in, right? Going in the Walmart parking lot is going to have, I think, two charging stations, because that meets the requirement in terms of the additional parking spaces. There's a formula, I'm not sure what it is, but Jamie would have it from planning and zoning, but I wonder, because that was legislatively decided, and there may be some language that talks about how charging can take place. So, because I could easily see some significant price gouging could happen. So I would assume that there's some consumer protections in that legislation that was written. So I'll check with our state representative and state senator to see if they can find some information.
I wish I knew more about it, but I don't. I can only, so I'll be the first to always say when I'm over my head on something here, so.
All right,
We'll work
so
on
we're
that.
gonna,
Can I move the table? Is it on? Is it?
you got it.
Yep.
You just did. Is there any further comments or questions? Let me try your minds, Selectman Federici.
Aye.
Those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. All right, thank
I think
you.
that's it.
That's it for you, I think, right?
Didn't have the agenda, I forgot what I had on the agenda.
Exactly. Item 7, Public Works Director Dave Castro, come on down. Some that want to consider to take possible action to cancel the purchase of 2 Ford F-150 hybrid pickup trucks due to lack of availability and purchase off state
What a
contracts
segue.
through a local dealer. This literally breaks my heart. All right, here we are. We've made some commitments to moving towards, more sustainable,
Yeah.
and we just can't get the stuff. It's just the pipelines just are not there. When did we put the order in on these?
That, I couldn't give
Was
you,
that last summer?
that was last summer and there were 2022 vehicles. And I contacted the vendor and they have no date or timeline from Ford. They're not in the process of building them right now. They're not even a thought,
Sorts of problems, but other trucks are coming out.
right? But they're not even a thought right now, so.
Okay.
Maybe it's better that we didn't get the early models.
Yeah, it could be, you know?
So many problems.
What is the differential in terms of price?
We're gonna save about $8,000 to go with these other 2 vehicles.
Okay.
So there's money for the roof.
Well done. Well done. Okay. So do we have a definitive price or?
The price for one vehicle is gonna be $50,673.60 when we get 2 of them.
All right, is there a motion to cancel the purchase and purchase the new, the as described vehicles?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
anything further? Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
I,
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. 7.2, discuss and take possible action on the purchase of 3 attachments for the Bobcat skid steer. Okay, you got me. What is a Bobcat skid steer?
So Bobcat is the brand. It's a small track loader, the field term skid steer. They're a phenomenal piece of equipment, and you could get a multitude of attachments with it. But when the Bobcat was purchased, it was just purchased as is, just a bucket on the front. They're very tight. They're on tracks and they could traverse a number of different slopes, everything. There's a ton of things you could do with them. There's tons of different options you can get for attachments. It's as simple as there's these 2 knobs, you click them up, you unhook the hoses and you put something else on, and now that machine becomes something else. You could get a snowblower attachment for them if you wanted to. I mean, there's a ton of them. So I looked at the 3 that I think we at Public Works could use right now to save the town money and to do some of the stuff on our own. Right now, we pay, for an example, last year, Tilcon, $600 an hour to grade a road. That's what the state bid price is. Smaller roads that we need to grade, which are, we have a lot of roads in town that are process or anything like that. We go out there and we grade them, but we're not getting them to where they should be so that the water flow is correct. It's very labor intensive right now because they go out there with their transits, they shoot the grades, and that requires a guy to go out there with a stick and keep moving. Okay, let's fix this. Okay, so it takes a long time. One of the attachments that I put in for was a grading attachment. It uses a laser. They set up the laser on the side of the road, and the machine has readers on it with a big blade, so they could shoot the grades this way. They could shoot it's 4-way grading. So we could go somewhere like Jacobs Beach or anywhere where we have stone driveways, and we can make it where water is flowing now a certain direction to prevent potholes for the future, to make the roads last longer and the parking lots to last longer. So that's one of the attachments I put in for. The other one is, it's called a planer. So we pay for any kind of grinding of roads, we pay Tilcon or whoever's on state contract to grind the road right now. This is an attachment that goes on the Bobcat. We're getting away from chip sealing. And so now we're going to be getting into thin overlays on our roads, which are 1.5 inches. You need 1.5 inches for compaction, inch and a half, right there. So in order to do it properly, you need to mill the key, what we call the key cuts, the beginning of the road where it meets the other road. You should mill that so that when you pave that, you have more of a lip so that it bites in, the material bites in, you don't get any shifting, you don't get any moving, and you get a nice clean seam. So we either pay Tilcon to do this or we purchase this attachment. We do it on our own. If we have deviations in a road where we have a hump, there's a hump on Elm Street, we could take that out with this attachment. We can grind that down. We could come in with our own asphalt, fill it in, and it would be properly sloped so the water would run instead of sitting up. And then the last attachment I'm looking at is a stump grinding attachment. We would go, so we have stumps right now. What we do is we either pay someone to grind them, we rip them out, and they sit at the stump dump, and we don't know what happens after that. Or what we can do as a town is we can grind them down about 2 to 3 inches below the surface, put something in there like copper nails or something that would impede the growth of the stump, put topsoil over it, and let it naturally just disintegrate into the earth. We would save a ton of money there. We're getting into, with our bucket truck coming, we're gonna be cutting more trees. We have to think ahead, and I think that with the stump grinding attachment, we eliminate a lot of moving stumps and that kind of stuff by using it.
Have you had discussions with the tree warden and or park and rec regarding the grinder?
The stump grinder, I talked to Rick Maynard about it.
So you coordinated with them?
Yes, he's super excited. Kevin, I've talked
I
to.
would think that would be pretty important.
You just extended the life of Kevin's budget. That,
You're
because-
saving every department here. The roof, Kevin's budget.
Right. For instance, the High Street. There are 5 stumps on High Street, which we're responsible for taking care of because Eversource does not. They're in our right of way, so we have to remove those. My understanding is there are several up on West Street because of the clearing that's been done up there. And there is a potential for more along Great Hill and along Hill and Great Hill Road. So the question I have is, do you have the capacity, the man hours to pick up all this additional work?
So with the stump grinding,
Yeah.
I look at stump grinding as a great winter project. It's raining, stump grind. It's snowing, we can't pothole patch, let's stump grind. So I could see, and with stump grinding, it's just a one-man operation. Just go out there, grind the stump. You're gonna have good mulch. Once it's done, we could take that away because the bucket can come with the Bobcat. They can just take the attachment out, put the bucket on, scoop it up, and we can bring it to the stump dump if we need to.
And any estimate on what you think we can save with Tilcon, with the grader and the planer?
With the grader, the grader is $600 an hour. That was last year's price. I don't even know what it is right now. And then, and just to be clear, with the grader, we're not gonna grade big roads, but say we get into a smaller road, we could easily grade a road, which will work for us.
Got it.
And the planer, I'm not sure what they charge for that, but when you get into the planing, so you have to pay for the transfer, you have to pay for the traffic control through Tilcon, you have to pay for the man hours. There's all costs associated with that we would get away from with this.
Got it. Just trying to do a little bit of math here. It's not gonna take that many hours with Tilcon to recoup that for both, for that work. All right, funding, you have it, is this already in your capital?
No, so I have an account that was designated for a Bobcat attachment in the amount of $30,000. And then I have an account from 2 or 3 years ago, I believe it was. It was for the replacement of the pickup that I'm driving now.
Okay.
I wanted to pull that money into, put it together with that to use for the purchase of these attachments.
Got it. Those funds for your truck no longer necessary, right?
No, because the insurance paid for the truck.
Got it. All right, I'll leave it to you to work with MJ to make sure that those line items are impacted, as long as we agree to move forward with this. So is there a motion to approve the purchase of these 3 attachments for the Bobcat in the amount of $49,352? Second. Second. Good. Any further comments or questions? Other than Dave, thank you very much for bringing this. This is the kind of thinking that's going to save us money and over the long term.
We're gonna be watching for that second Bobcat order.
Got it. All right, let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8, Parks and Recreation Director Rick Maynard, discuss and take possible action to contact with DATCO for the 2023 summer bus services. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you for supporting Dave on that Bobcat. The planer and the grader would really be, I think, a real asset at Jacobs Beach. We get a lot of problem with potholes down there, and Public Works does what they can with their loader to help with that. But I think that piece of equipment will help a lot. So I'm thankful for us too, that you approved that for Public Works. So the first item I think was the DATCO bus. My program staff solicited quotes for, this is for our Get Out Whale program. It's a trip camp. We have 40 kids signed up every week, which is pretty much the max that we take. And it's a travel camp. They go 4 days a week to different places like Squamicut or tubing up in New Hartford, lake compounds, Hammonasset, different places that they go every day somewhere different. Peter Pan is one of the companies they saw a quote from. They are all booked up. They are not available, especially transportation, which is the local school bus company. They don't have air conditioned buses. And DATCO was the other one. They have, their coaches, motor coaches, air conditioned, much more comfortable in the summer for the kids to ride on those versus a school bus. So they were the only ones who actually quoted, gave a price. It's a total of 32 dates, so 32 trips. They range from about $798 per trip to I think $898 roughly, about $100 difference depending where they're going and how long they're going for. But the total for the summer, and this is all paid for through the program, is $26,333.
Excellent. Thanks, Rick. So that you did get multiple quotes, and this is the company you guys are recommending.
Yes.
Great.
I believe we used them last year too. They were a little bit less last year. Of course, gas has gone up. But it's the same company, and our staff is very, very happy with the response from them and the quality of the buses and everything.
And that includes the drivers, right?
Yeah, that's a contracted service for the bus for the day.
You got that, fine, Brad.
What's that, Lou?
Oh, sorry, Matt, hold on.
Rick, a couple of years ago, I think we needed to increase the number of buses, and we gave you some American Rescue Plan funds, because I think we could only have a certain number of kids on the bus at the time, with distancing. We're past that, right?
We are. You're right, Matt. They had to, be like in every other seat or something. They had to really spread out. I think the max we could take was like 20 maybe on a bus. Maybe it was less than that, 15 or 20. But yeah, we're past that now.
Great. Okay, is there a motion to approve the contract with DATCO for the 2023 summer bus services for the Get Out, Way Out? Is that program? Is that what it is? In the amount of $26,333. In a second.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Let me try your minds, Selectman Federici.
Aye.
Those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. 8.2, receive an update on the Jacobs Beach septic and take possible action. Rick?
Yeah, I don't have great news on that one. The engineer for the project and Sonia and Steve Nidoff and I met with, we requested, we sent an invitation to 5 contractors to meet with us at Jacobs Beach, and we met, I think it was a week ago Friday, and they were supposed to give us prices by this past Friday. Only 2 actually came to meet with us, and they both recommended against doing it this year. A couple of reasons. One is you folks approved my last meeting for me to go ahead and order the septic tanks to get a little head start on it. But even with that, it's about 6 weeks before we're going to get them. So that puts us past Memorial Day. And at this point, we think that the kind of crowds and the contractor is very nervous. You got to have a crane. Let me step back. These tanks weigh 30,000 pounds. And the only way to get them from the parking lot to behind the bathhouse where they're going to go, you have to have a crane there to drop them in. They're very leery about the potential high amount of people in the in the beach at that time and traffic, and everybody's recommending put it off to the fall. What does that do to us? Not a real lot. I think I would probably end up pumping out the tank maybe when we get into August, maybe every couple of weeks. It'll cost, it's $200 to pump it out, so it's not a huge expense to us. Over the course of the summer, maybe it's $1,000 to pump it. But But I think at this point, in the interest of safety, I think I agree with them. It's probably better to wait until fall when things settle down there.
Last year you had sort of a emergency over a weekend when bathrooms became unusable for a short time. Do you think, even with the extra pumping, do you think it might be worth having some porta potties there just to, even if they're not used, but just to have them there in case there was some kind of a problem, especially if it was a weekend situation or whatever?
It's an option, Sandy, but think about it. If the bathroom's there and it's open, I'm not sure how many people would actually use the porta potty.
No, I just meant they would use them if the bathroom suddenly became unusable.
Yeah, well,
Well,
it's
I
a
don't know, I
thought.
just, I
It's
don't
a
know.
thought, but I think if we stay ahead of it and we pump it,
Okay,
pump it, they tell us how much they're taking out of there. So we'll know if the volume is increasing. And we can manage that by, we know we have big picnics going on. Excuse me. Of course, when camp starts, there's gonna be more flushes. And I think once we get into July and August, if we do it every 2 weeks, we're probably gonna be okay.
Rick, what? Are you
sorry.
all set, Steve?
I'm good.
Rick, how long does the actual installation take? How long would it take to complete?
They're telling us about 4 days.
So the worst case scenario, if we simply close the beach for 4 days, 5 days, could this be accomplished? Or are these companies, have their own issues?
I think they're pretty adamant about not doing it this time, in May or June.
Is that only because of the potential for people being there? Because what Charlie said is, we just shut it down, so there's not gonna be anybody there.
Yeah.
That,
that's what-
yeah, that's probably a big part of it. But think about it, if we get 80, 90-degree days, it's gonna be tough to keep people out of there.
No, it is what it is.
Business decisions.
All right, but, to your point though, suffering through another summer, staying ahead of it, it doesn't sound like it's overly expensive. I was more concerned with, to Sandy's point, that we had crisis situations, and I don't want it to become an environmental issue down there.
Yeah. No, I'm not opposed to putting Porta Johns. We could do it. Keep down there during that.
I don't like Port Johns either, but, to keeping ahead, you think will make a difference?
Let me add one other thing I forgot to mention. We did put lower flush toilets in near the end of last season, so that's going to help. It's less gallons each time it flushes. I can't tell you what kind of difference it makes, but I've been told it will make a difference. I have to admit, I wish this was done by now. There's no question about that. It seems now it's not going to be. It's a good possibility it can't get done. And I'm okay if we stay ahead of it by pumping that tank out.
All right, the other question I have then is, we've ordered the equipment, or the tanks or whatever. So what are we gonna do? Just store them down there in the grass or something for a year? Is that going to be okay?
You're gonna do it in the fall, aren't you?
I would cancel it. Yeah,
Delivery probably.
they can't deliver for 5 or 6 more weeks anyway, so I would just call them and cancel it. See if they'll hold the PO to the fall. If not, we'll cancel the purchase order and reissue it in the fall.
Well, when you do the reissue, my vote would be to purchase them with a fall delivery date.
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna actually change the purchase order now for a delivery date in September or October.
We could do that. We only have two purchase orders out, I think, right now. One is for the tanks and one is for the watertight covers that go on the tanks. I could call the 2 sales reps that I spoke with and ask them, can you just hold these? And hold the price until, let's say, October.
When do you officially close the beach? You don't staff it anymore with
Labor Day.
Labor Day is that it? When
Labor Day, but it's still, if it's a warm September, there's still gonna be a lot of people down there.
I think it would be less of a problem for the public if you did it anytime in September after Labor Day, because school's back in session and,
Right.
Well, I think it's gotta be Rick's call. He knows
Yeah,
it better than
yeah.
I think the dollars and cents of it, you know, I think we can survive that probably, but it's, he knows the flow down there.
Rick, you got a fun from
Wow,
trying.
Charlie, good one.
You teach it to it. That's usually Rick's line.
That was good.
All right, well,
Makes sense.
let us know what you find out from the supplier in terms of holding the purchase order and holding to the price and just delivery to be at a future point.
All right, well, thank you, thank you. Hey, Matt, if you don't mind, I'll just give you an update to the Adams Tennis Courts. They took the fencing down Friday, a meeting at 10 o'clock in 20 minutes with the contractor and the engineer there, and they're gonna start this week ripping that up and getting that done.
How long is that gonna take, Rick?
I think we gave a deadline of June 10th.
Okay. All right, just takes a couple of tennis courts out of play, tennis courts and temporary pickleball courts out of play, right?
Right, but meanwhile, the high school courts are still there. That's why we want to time it so they weren't all out at the same time.
That's right, well, the high school's got the spring sports season, right?
Correct.
All right, thanks, Rick, for that update.
Thank you.
All right, item 9. Town engineer Janice Blasiak. 9.1, consider and take possible action to contract with Race Coastal Engineering for engineering services for Falcon Road. Morning, Janice.
Good morning. So I came to you a while ago on these two projects, actually, Falcon Road and Chimney Corner prospect. And we did proceed quite quickly into COVID and then getting the feasibility studies done. And at the time, we had asked our consultants to give us a total cost to the end of the project, which, I think I had explained to you was a little difficult since we hadn't done a feasibility study and picked the concept yet. So we did just contract with them to do the first part, which was the feasibility study and preliminary designs and permitting, which we're at completion now. And we did go through a few iterations of even preliminary design. Feasibility study had a lot of public outreach, particularly to the Statham's Head area, since these two projects are there. We've been coordinating with all the interested and adjacent property owners, as well as the Statham's Head Association. And Falcon Road, unfortunately, got damaged in December with that storm we had. So right now we're down to 1 lane on Falcon Road. Water company is proceeding to plan for a water main replacement project ahead of our project. And I expect they'll be starting in the next couple months. In the meantime, we're expecting our permits for Falcon Road from DEEP and Army Corps to happen probably by June. And so I want to be in a position where we're ready to go with getting this project out to bid. So we need to complete design and prepare bid documents. The last phase would be construction administration, but I'm holding off on that right now because we're a little up in the air on funding sources for this project and trying to really nail down the level of construction administration to be done by our engineers is a little unknown at this point. So that'll be something I think that makes more sense to come to you when we're ready to award a bid and also award them the contract for construction administration to the scope we need. The issue of funding for construction is a bit of a concern for me since we have a half open road right now and we're very vulnerable to more damage. We've kind of gone back and forth. Originally, the funding source was LOTSIP program through State Bond Commission funding. And that's still a placeholder for us, but it's a process that we still need to follow through on, which is a bit of a time-consuming, onerous process. And with the road and the damage situation, it's a little concerning. In the meantime, we thought we had monies coming from above, from the state directly to the town in a bond authorization, of which I think there was about $7.5 million we requested for both Falcon, Chimney Corners, and the Lake Quanapug project. We kind of bundled them into a $7.5 million package for resilience projects because they all really are resilience projects. That funding's a little unclear to me if it's coming.
Which source it's coming? from?
Yeah, and now I thought originally it was gonna be a direct funds to the town, but now it sounds like it might be going through a state agency, which then adds a few complicating factors usually, because,
Right, delays.
yes. And, well, and more work,
Yes.
okay? There's the requirements for SHPO, there's requirements for flood management certifications. So state money comes with strings attached. When I had this conversation with Matt, actually, after I wrote my letter to you folks, that I certainly need the 75,000 and change for the work to be done to get to a point of construction on this project. But I think I'd like to ask you for an additional $15,000 if needed to satisfy all of the requirements of the added requirements for grant funding costs for our consultant to kind of get us maneuvered through that process if needed. And then if we don't have monies coming through in the near term from the state in some form, I think we need to start talking about what we're doing with this road.
Agreed.
Because it's
When you say this road, Falcon,
Falcon Road.
that's just gonna be my question. Are we going to simply rebuild the wall and put the 2 lanes back? Are we changing the road?
It's, so the project as it stands now in preliminary design and permitting is to elevate the road about 1.5 feet and to rebuild the entire water frontage to a reinforced concrete wall built on pilings and piers and, fully anchored into bedrock. Currently, we have a rubble stone wall that was built there and it just does not hold up to the wave action there. So it's gonna be, an improved situation that will not hopefully ever experience the damage that we've been experiencing over the past, 5-10 years on that road.
The reinforced concrete will be enough, you think? That's all we got at this point without changing the road.
Yeah, I mean, the location of the road is pretty much where it's gonna be. It's gonna be a little higher. It's also gonna have a parapet wall. Currently, right now, it's wide open, so the waves just kind of come right over the road. It's at a lower elevation and there's no parapet wall. We're adding a parapet wall to also add some resiliency just to the use of the road, even in a storm event, so that when there's, big waves coming in, it may not be, over the road and bringing all the sand and debris that gets deposited both on the road and the parking lot for
What about
safety.
widening that road? I mean, that road is used for walkers and bikers so much. Is there any widening going on?
We're not planning any widening. We have a limited right of way there. There was no real request from the association for widening or extending the sidewalk beyond where it goes now. We are relocating the crosswalk to put the stairs in a location where it'll be less likely impacted from waves and a little more protected. But given the traffic volumes there, honestly, I'm a little surprised it's even considered a collector road, but I think it's just because of the circulation it provides to the neighborhood. But I haven't heard anything in terms of the need for additional pedestrian facilities there.
You said you had a neighborhood outreach.
Yes. Yeah, we did. And in some instances, there were people who wanted to just shut the road down and turn it only into a bike lane, and walkway and not have it be a through road. Obviously, it's the people who live right there who want less traffic in front of their houses. But the association felt it was very important for for the members and neighbors that are beyond that area to make access to the beach as well as to the yacht club and other amenities that they have to have that open.
Services.
And yes, and my priority was really the emergency services for access. So
So what do you need for us?
so the approval of $75,735 with an additional up to $15,000 if needed for added grant funding costs. And so that we can.
You are gonna continue to pursue the state in that.
Yes. Mhm.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Just as some comments, the commitment for the $7.5 million was secured by former state representative Sean Scanlon in recent conversations with the governor's office. That $7.5 million is going to wind up in Guilford's pockets at some point. They did not go through the typical bond authorization process. There still is another meeting or two, one more meeting. But Sean assures me that money there is $7.5 million earmarked for the resilience projects.
So any additional complications that affect this project, same thing goes for Quanapug.
Oh, yes, so yes, and then Chimney Corners is a little behind in terms of the permitting phase, so that'll be like the next project that we'll probably come to you for. That was held up with some neighbor concerns and things like that, so once we have a better understanding of where we're headed, we'll be back to you for Chimney Corners, which obviously is a flooding issue. My bigger, and even like Quanapug, we what's going on there. So yes, as I mentioned to Matt, any state funding for that project is going to complicate things with regard to historic preservation and reviews by the State Historic Preservation Office, and we'll have to maneuver that path.
Issues that fell control, are there?
There may be, yes, because it was, it's called Bloody Cove for a reason. And it's called Sachem's Head for a reason. So there is the chance that we'll see the need to do an archaeological study and to include archaeological oversight during construction in case there are any artifacts found during construction. Believe it or not, even Boston Street Sidewalk project, because that was state funded, I had to hire an archaeologist to do a review of that area and to provide a report recommending or not recommending additional review during construction, obviously because Boston Street is so built up and, it came back that there was likely, and the fact that we're only digging down, a couple feet to build the sidewalks, there was likely we wouldn't encounter any kind of artifacts, so there was no need to have oversight during construction. But yes, that's some of the strings attached to state funding right now.
You mentioned Quanapug, are there any updates up there?
No. I'm maneuvering that. One thing I am trying to maneuver is I did see a layout of the new intersection, and I think it's just a little too much, and they're treating it like a highway and it's a scenic road, so we have to have those conversations to try and scale that back as much as possible to limit impacts and keep it kind of reasonable.
146 all over. Want to build it big and spectacular.
Well, I mean, engineering firms just can't help themselves. They read the,
Monuments.
Yeah, well, it's not that. They're reading the requirements and regulations that FHWA as well as the state puts out there for their highways. They are called highways because they're state roads. But you got to consider the context, and thankfully things are becoming a little more sensitive to context sensitive design, and the fact that it's a state highway, a state scenic highway, is important. And so we just need to kind of scale back that need to build it like it's a highway.
Speaking of the Boston Street sidewalks, Janice and I had a conversation the other day. We are now, because we're almost complete, we've started the construction. We are now eligible to apply for another grant similar to the one that we had to extend the sidewalks right past your house.
Get that snow shovel ready.
That's Phil's job. But to extend it, take it the next length, to extend it from where 146, I think it's Michelle Donovan's property.
It is Michelle's, yeah.
From there out to Sunrise, to complete
Nice.
that, length,
Yeah.
that loop.
That would be nice.
So I think
So
we're gonna,
logical.
yeah, well, it's,
Where exactly is there going to be a crosswalk on Route 1?
No.
No.
We're not proposing any crosswalks right now.
Does the light on Goose Lane and Route 1 have a walk cycle in it?
I don't know you can certainly cross there. I don't know if it has the actual crosswalks, I think, or a dedicated phase. But that's something we could look at, but that's.
I remember when they built the sidewalk under the highway, there was this big thought process that between the parking lot and the emergency center, that there was going to be this large need for pedestrians I always wondered about it, but if nothing else, I guess we ought to start thinking about providing. It all comes down to the state.
Right, yeah, that would have to go through the local traffic authorities
Crosswalk
recommendations.
without a light, and there's.
No, and that's, so we had some concerns from, say, neighbors, on the neighborhoods to the north of Route 1. And that's kind of my comment was, we're not gonna put a crosswalk or propose to put a crosswalk where the sidewalks are gonna end as part of this project across to, say, was that Tanner Marsh?
Tanner Marsh.
Or, that area. It just doesn't seem like a safe area to have people cross without a light. The real recommendation would be is those folks coming from the north would go down along Route 1 to Goose Lane intersection to utilize the signals to cross.
Do you think that in this first phase that we're going to connect to the second entrance to Sunrise, and if we go that far, do we just simply connect to the bridge?
I haven't looked at it quite frankly closely enough to know what the
I mean, it just
challenges
seems,
are.
while we have all the construction going on.
Yeah, well,
Maybe not in the summer, but to go to the bridge, to the boundary,
so keep in mind, if we apply for a connectivity grant, it's gonna take
I know.
years before we construct even the next section. So we'll certainly look at what makes sense as the end point, because while we're doing it, we might as well.
Well, my only thought are the folks that live on that lower loop. I mean, they literally gotta walk all the way around Sunrise. and
Right,
walk on
right.
Gutter to get
No, that's a good
in.
point. Yeah, it's not in my mind yet, if going just to the first intersection is enough, or it should just be brought all the way to the, next
I
intersection.
think the first intersection will help a lot.
I think the geography is a challenge, a little more of a challenge.
Yes.
than a relatively level,
The road is much steeper. I
Steeper.
think the embankments are steeper.
Yeah, there's no question you have to cut into the private properties. You have to get it up over it, well, whatever.
okay, and build retaining walls.
Yeah, potentially retaining walls. That's
Not if you put the sidewalk on the top.
Well, you're held to minimum, maximum slopes,
Right.
sidewalks and stuff, so, yeah.
Probably have to put steps in that.
Well, that doesn't satisfy ADA access. You build steps on sidewalks.
Thank you, thanks, Janice. Is there a motion to approve up to $90,735 for the engagement with Race Coastal Engineering?
Second,
Any further comments or questions? Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici?
Aye.
Those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, consider take possible action to award RFP 1-2223 CDBG Small Cities Grant Administrator. Let me give you a little bit of background on this. As you may recall, we've applied for a couple of CDBG grants over the years, housing rehabilitation program, housing diversion program. Our intent here is to secure funds for pre-development work for another housing, affordable housing opportunity. And that opportunity exists on a piece of town property. We own about 11-acre parcel off of Sawmill, on Sawmill. Just as you take the right by the vet's office, you go over the bridge on the left-hand side, little dog pound, and there's about 11 acres in there. And we think it's a very appropriate place for affordable housing. On Friday, we submitted a notice to the Connecticut Department of Housing of our intent to apply for the CDBG grant. We had some rough numbers that we secured through some conversations with some developers. Just the typical cost. I think it's about $750,000 to $770,000, somewhere in that.
You've explored the wetlands issue in there.
Yeah.
Did the bridge change the wetlands boundary in there?
No, didn't. I don't know. So as I said, there are about 11 acres up there. Some of it is wetlands affected, but it's
When
not.
you go up the hill, I forgot
Well,
about
it
up
is
the hill.
up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about where the dog.
Right. So the first step of this was for us to secure a grant writer. As you may recall, when we did the housing rehabilitation, we hired an individual by Lisa Lowe and Associates, you remember? who, as our grant writer slash administrator, was entitled to be paid out of the proceeds of the grant award. This will be the same situation here, assuming that we get grant funds, but our exposure would be 11,500. But to be determined as to where that comes from, either the proceeds of the grant or we would have to fund it through some other methodology. We went out to bid. We only received 2 responses, and we are recommending we go with Eastern Connecticut Housing Opportunities, ECHO. They're based out in London. They are an affordable housing development company that owns a suite of wraparound services. The intent here would be for us to negotiate with these folks for the second layer of services. So our, as I said, our minimum, which includes up to potentially 12% of the grant award. Now you'll see the folks on the other one was 8%, but that did not include the wraparound services, and we have documentation from both bidders as to what those wraparound services are. So at this point, I'd like to consider approving the award of RFP 12223 CDBG Small Cities Grant Administrator to Eastern Connecticut Housing Opportunities. Is there
So
a motion?
moved.
Second. Comments or questions? What's interesting about this is that will somehow become part of a sort of concentrated area, because you've got this property actually abuts Apple Tree Lane, that affordable housing development, the Hubbard Road project. Okay. And well, we've also extended sidewalks all the way up to Hubbard Road, and Janice's budget includes the capital budget, or no, it wasn't capital, it was in the bonding money, I think, for sidewalk construction improvements on Hubbard Road to be able to connect. So the assumption here would be we built sidewalks past the bridge, the Sawmill River Bridge, if you've been down that area, that the developer would be required to extend sidewalks onto that property to create that full loop. So
Speaking of developers and required sidewalks, I forgot to follow through with the new zoning changes about that requirement. I mean, I know we had it on Route 1, but that one on Hubbard Road, when they didn't include the sidewalks, is very disappointing.
well, we couldn't force them to. That's the.
Well, I know, but we are rewriting the code now.
Okay, so any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. So let me just explain how the process might work before you vote yes or no at this point. Once we have the grant administrator in place, and if we win the award, the next phase would be to go out to RFP for a preferred developer for the project. All right, we would put some criteria around it. I would think we'd probably want to do nonprofit developers, similar to what we did with the last project. So we would go out similar to what we what we did when we chose NeighborWorks New Horizons for the project.
And we'd have to have a public meeting about the land again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because the intent here, there's a couple of ways to do this. The town could actually retain rights to the land. I'm not sure we want to do that. I don't think we need to be in the landlord business. Plus, if it goes to home ownership, which is one of the options, as opposed to which would be like similar to what we did on Whitmer's Place on State Street. That would turn that property into tax revenue, tax producing revenue in addition. Not that that's the motivation.
My understanding, he's sold all those. So it sounds like.
I think he has, yes. So we had this property because a long time ago, there was the dog pound was there.
That was part of it.
So the town acquired property.
I think it's always been.
I don't know the full history, but I've heard that it might have been an open space in lieu of, but there are
I don't
no
know
open
the
space.
history of it.
No, there are no open space restrictions on it.
Okay.
So, All right, let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. I think this is a good opportunity for us to continue to show that we're looking.
It's a handy spot. I mean, that's a perfect spot.
But-
There's a note on the agenda about setting a public hearing date. I don't know if that's an agenda item. but
Yeah,
there's a
Trey.
comment in here.
Want to weigh in when do we need to set the,
So you can set it for May 25th at 7:30 at the town hall in that room, and it'll be hybrid.
all right, is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second,
Any further comments or questions? Sue, thanks for catching that.
Does it has to be at night? I mean, for this
Yes.
particular grant? Okay.
Yes. It does. Okay, I've got a motion in a second. Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. That motion
that
carries.
was the 25th, right?
Item 11, discuss and take possible action on noise control variance application for a concert at Bishop's Red Barn on May 13th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second. If there's any questions on this application was submitted by our favorite Guilford Courier reporter, Ben Rayner, who is actually on this call. Any questions? And this is a benefit. Ben, you want to just talk a minute about it?
Sure. Thanks for giving me a second. We're doing a benefit for a great Guilford resident who was traumatically injured last summer. He sadly broke his neck body surfing up at Musquamacut with his family, and he's permanently paralyzed. There's been some good news lately. He is able to breathe on his own with a special device, but this is a lifelong affliction that just his friends and family were hoping to throw a party and raise some money for, which we've been successful at. The event is sold out, and Bishop's has been great. And so is the police department in helping us get everything organized. But I was told last week that getting a noise variance would probably be something that would be prudent. So I submitted that to the board last week.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Ben, thank you very much.
Gratitude is all mine. Thank you, everyone.
You got it. Item 12, request for use of town property. 12.1, act on a request from Guilford Day to have a temporary display of purple flags on the green from May 6th to the 27th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. Time to get my flags out of the garage. I know I've still got 2 or 3 of them, put them on my yard, so. 12.2, act on a request from Paul Dostey Care Foundation to place a sign on the green advertising Care Fest taking place June 10th, 2023, sign placement 5/27 through 6/10. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, another great opportunity to pay tribute to somebody here in town who did an awful lot for a lot of people, Paul Dostey. Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. 12.3, act on a request from the Keeping Society to place a sign on the green advertising its quarry tour taking place May 13th, 2023, sign placement today through the 13th of May. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. 12.4, act on a request from St. George Church, Knights of Columbus, to place a sign on the green advertising its carnival taking place August 8th to the 12th, 2023, sign placement 7:30 through 8:12. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second,
Let me try your minds. Selectman Federici,
Aye.
those in the room?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Committee reports? Yeah.
Ongoing. Everything's
Ongoing.
ongoing housing. With Woodruff, we had a pretty productive meeting last week. Still a number of issues to be addressed, but
Yes,
we're working on it.
Yes, sir. Just, I'll add something
Yeah.
to that, for the housing, committee. zoning changes that were forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission included inclusionary zoning provisions, which is what, 12.1 or 12.6.1, whatever portion of it, anyway. But it included a straw man. While we don't think that they're going to adopt them as they are, it has become a starting point for the conversation, the larger conversation in the community. Right now, the zoning changes, the zoning rewrite code update is in the public comment phase right now.
35 days.
35 days. So we anticipate that there will, and I think there are already some comments around the inclusionary zoning piece. The inclusionary zoning piece also called for a fee in lieu of for developers. Now, also, I don't remember exactly what it was, over 10 units or over 20 units. I can't remember where it actually starts.
With a 12%. But again, that's, as Matt said, this is just a starting place to, we're rewriting the code. It was an opportunity, especially with a number of developments coming into town, which may not fall under this depending on the timing of when things happen, but we can't just ignore this. We have to try to do some of these things and see how it shakes out. And it'd be interesting to see what the public says.
Right. And this fee in lieu of would ostensibly fund an affordable housing trust fund, which Pete and Jamie are actually currently in the process of investigating how to set those up, taking examples from other communities and doing them. That and theoretically over time we could fund that through fee in lieu of, or we could fund it as a line item in the budget. We could fund it through a variety of ways to assist developers with moving forward with affordable housing, providing incentives for developers. So more to come on that piece.
So the fund would, just trying to think of what the fund would be used for, but okay. Well, I think it's sorted out.
Land acquisition, tax abatements, variety of things that.
Enhancements.
Yeah.
So, all right. Correspondence, old business. I have a bit of old business. TJ, you want to come up just for a quick second?
Yeah, sure. And this is Robin Devernak also.
Hi, Robin. How are you? Both of you are welcome. Good to see you again. Both of you are welcome.
Thank you.
This is just related to the issue around the project, the capital project. TJ and I have been communicating more often than he probably cares to around this issue. As you heard earlier, we submitted a request for some kind of project overview, project description, rationale, impacts, et cetera. I then submitted a list of about 15 questions that largely have arisen from some of the residents, as well as our own concerns, as we talked about here. So TJ and I were going back and forth with a final draft on the report. I think when last we talked, it needed to see at least one more level of approval. That's what happens when you work in a corporation, right? Just briefly, I'll summarize where I think we are at this point. I appreciate the Eversource's willingness to put a delay in the project itself. I understand now, which has basically been stopped since I think end of February or early March, right? Particularly in terms of vegetation management, right? The capital project is one that, to my understanding, they are the regulatory authority through the certificate of public convenience and necessity allows them to do these kinds of projects, these infrastructure projects, without requiring local approval. That's the regulatory environment. So the project includes a couple of things. One is putting in new poles, which is the new standard pole. It's a little bit bigger. It's different material. You can see some of them on, not Leeds Island, but Satcham's Head Road, North Madison Road. I understand they've already started to put them in. They're more resilient. They don't rot, and they're also 5 feet higher because of the new standards that are evolving relative to pole attachments, 5G services. I understand 5G has to go above electric. Is that, you guys were always on top.
So just so you know, we also have our Director of Operations for Eastern Division on the phone,
Okay,
as well as two of our veg management folks, Dale, the arborist that's local, and his supervision, Stan.
got it.
So Barry may be able to better address why we are raising the height of the poles
Got it.
and where the attachments occur. Barry?
Could I just ask?
Good
one
morning,
question?
everybody. I hope y'all can hear me well. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to chat with you about our project that we have in the area. So
Barry,
we've all been,
Barry, just hold on a minute. We have one of the selectwoman has.
You may be answering this, Barry, but one of the points that the public who came and talked to us, they kept saying, they kept quoting current heights of poles versus possible proposed heights of poles. So just for my own knowledge, what is the current height of most of the poles on Great Hill Road right now?
right now, you probably have between 35 feet and 40 feet poles. Now, our standards change over the years because the weather patterns have changed over the years. And we have been tasked as a company and by our regulatory authority to beef up our facilities to withstand the additional weather that we're all seeing. As y'all all know, as customers, we've seen weather patterns change consistently over the years. And I'm sure y'all have noticed that the coastline in particular gets hit the hardest with winds nowadays, right? You've noticed that the storm comes in, it goes up into the western corner, northwestern corner. We get hit with the winds along the south coast, in particular, the Madison and New London areas and the towns covered by those area work centers. So we've been tasked to beef up the equipment, like I've mentioned to you, and that includes raising the height of the poles, right? So our poles standards, maybe 30, 40 years ago, we would have been putting in 30 or 35 foot poles, right? These poles also have classes. Classes in layman's terms is the thickness of the pole. So you can go from a class 5, which is a smaller pole, all the way up to what is called an H1 pole, with which the circumference of the pole is much wider. So we have now changed our standards to withstand the weather patterns in terms of icing and so on our facilities, such that our pole heights are now usually around 45 for our pole height, right? And class 1 for our pole circumference, which is considerably different from what may have been installed in your town maybe 30 years ago, where you may have even seen 35 class 3 or class 4 poles, considerably shorter, considerably smaller. As they age, because they're wood, but then they were not treated like they would now to be able to withstand the elements and so on, those poles are just not sustainable anymore to the weather patterns that we're seeing in terms of the high winds and so on. So we've got to do something to beef up our equipment. Now, if you look at the report also states that we went from bare wire. So bare wire is when you look up, you can sometimes tell that the wire is either shining in the air, the top wires at the top, or is covered in black, right? That black insulation also provides additional benefit to that wire, so that if a tree falls on it, it does not go directly onto the actual wires that are carrying the electricity. The rubber sheath on it provides additional, beefing up of that thing, so that if trees fall on it, it's not automatically going to cause a short for everyone. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, so just to get back again to the pole height, so if this goes through as you propose, the pole heights, the maximum pole height that could be put up would be 45 feet?
It would though, so sometimes there are junction poles as well. So the maximum would be 50 at the most, but this project is 45 feet. So a junction pole, let me explain what a junction pole is. It's much like a junction in the street, right? It's going to be a pole that's going to be at the center, and it has multiple conductors on that pole going in different directions. So that pole in itself needs to be stronger because there are additional forces on that pole pulling it in different directions, from left, from right, north, south. So that pole in itself needs to be a little taller and a little stronger to withstand those physical forces of tension that's going to have just standard being there carrying our facilities. So you may see a 50-foot pole But the lion's share of those poles will be 45 feet, just like you mentioned, man.
And on the project that you're currently describing, approximately how many of those junction poles would be required?
Well, right now, this is based on a lateral, so at most you may see one, but depending on the lateral, so a lateral is, let me explain how a lateral works. You have a main drag where all the power carries on that main drag, and then there are offshoots of the main drag to feed these laterals. That's what we call a lateral circuit. So it's possible that you would have one junction pole on the main drag feeding that lateral, but then with a lateral, you may have streets coming off of that lateral that would also have additional junction poles that the circuit may shoot off to feed additional customers. So you may see a junction pole there, but at the most with a lateral, there's usually about one or two at the most.
Okay, that's enough for me.
All right, no problem, man. If you need anything more, feel free to ask.
Okay.
You got it, you got it. So it's my understanding that Eversource is going to, they delivered the poles to the properties up along Long Hill and Great Hill, or just Long Hill? Both, all right. So that process is of replacing the poles is about to start a little later this week, if I'm not mistaken, right? But what Eversource has agreed to is to hold off on the vegetation management piece and also the rewiring until such time as we can satisfactorily,
How do you
as best
replace the pole without rewiring?
We will have to, that comes in very quickly, right, Barry? So the poles will go in, and then that's one set of crews. So a digger comes out, digs, they set the pole, then another crew will come out and transfer the wires from the old pole to the new pole.
Oh, so the poles are gonna be in a different location?
Well, it'll be adjacent to,
Oh, okay.
looking at what the ground is, if there's stone or whatever around it, and then trying not to impede on individual homeowners' property, right? And I don't know where all the poles are aligned, but they won't be too far from the original installation. Just
No, they
even
won't
for
be.
our
That's
homework.
correct. That's correct.
So-
Robert is correct. We tried our best to go right back into the same hole that the pole was in before, and maybe off to the left or off to the right a bit. But we also have the crew that comes through afterwards and removes the old poles from the system as well. So we all have two poles beside each other. One old, one new is very ugly. So we do try our best to get out there ASAP and remove the old poles from your system. However, do understand that the way poles operate, you hear people call them electric poles, or you hear them call them telephone poles, right? These poles have multiple wires on them. All of them are not electric. At the very top of the pole is the electric. They come down a little bit more and there's secondaries, which is also electric. But then after that, we have third-party attachers and communications such as Frontier, Verizon, whoever the case may be. We do not define when they move their facilities. We are responsible for ours. We do notify them when we've shifted our facilities so that they can go ahead and do the same, but their schedules do not always coincide with ours, which is why you would see a double pole out there, sometimes with other facilities attached to it, which is usually communications wires, and we have to wait for them to shift from the old pole to the new pole, and then we'll go and remove that old pole. But we cannot remove the old pole until those facilities are shifted by the communications providers.
So Barry, to address a question Matt asked earlier on, and I'm not gonna say carte blanche because I know I've seen it happen, but for the most part, 99% of the time, our primary wires are all on the top. We can't let communication interfere, but I think
That's
that
correct.
there have been circumstances where we know we're gonna come out and do the extra work, and we may have let them encroach on our space just to get the service through.
Right.
By regulation, we can't allow that to exist beyond a certain period of time,
Got it.
just because of safety.
And my understanding is you guys are still gonna be on the top, but
Yes.
because of some of
Yes.
the new spacing requirements for 5G service, all right, there's not enough leeway
Right.
unless you extend or move yours up higher.
That's correct, sir. You got it. You just hit the nail on the head because I was just going to mention that. So we talk about pole heights as well. Per the NESC standard, which is the National Electric Safety Code, there are specific areas on the pole with which communication would go, which is lower than electric, and so on and so forth. So as you go up the pole, it goes from communication to electric at the very top. With the new standards now, and then everybody going with fiber, optic, and so on. We have a lot of third-party attachments that go onto our poles. So we need to leave more space on the pole in order for communications providers and additional companies to be able to attach to that said pole. Therefore, we need to give them the space on the pole to do that safely without encroaching upon the electrical gain of the pole, because that's the most dangerous part of it. And we are the only qualified individuals that can enter that electrical gain. Therefore, we need to give other companies enough space away from us to be able to work safely. So that is the intent of a taller pole lots of the times as well. Not only to gain clearance, but also to allow other companies to be able to attach the pole safely and run their equipment as well.
So back to the double pole piece.
Yeah.
We're gonna need to work in parallel of you speaking to Frontier or Spectrum or whomever's out here, because that could become a pain point for the community when they see those double poles out there for an extended period of time. And again, we'll move our infrastructure as quickly as possible, but working in all the communities that we do work in, it definitely becomes a pain point. And the optics are that it's an Eversource thing, but we'll move our wires as quickly as possible, and then communication becomes the issue. So we'll try to keep you in line with how we're moving along, so you can kind of weigh heavy on them to start to move their infrastructure too.
So ultimately, at the end of all this, there'll be a new pole in place of an old pole, but it could be higher. So then to the neighbors' pain points, to use your expression, is the whole tree thing. So with these taller poles going in the same spot as the other poles, how they were quoting something like 187 trees. I drove the whole length of Great Hill Road last week because I wanted to see for myself what was possible, or any, I just wanted to see it.
Right.
So how the 10-foot difference, I guess, in the pole. So how many trees are affected by that? Because you've already cleared trees.
We do have our vegetation. I'm sorry, we do have our vegetation management team on here, so they could give you a little bit more of an idea of what we think of when we're doing the vegetation management. But please do understand, the intent is not just to remove the trees, because we do understand how beautiful they are. We are New Englanders. We like to look up and see the trees as well. But it does affect our facilities, and more importantly, the reliability of our customers, more so than anything. And we have Stan on the line here. Stan will be able to give you an idea of what the thought process was towards the vegetation management around our facilities. Stan, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barry, and good morning, everybody. So as Barry mentioned, one of the key targets of this infrastructure improvement project is also going to be the protection of these infrastructures from trees. The 10-foot clearance gives us that protection from regrowth laterally into lines, as well as removing the overhead from the conductors. That would prevent dead or declining or structurally weak branches from falling down onto these conductors. And at the same time, we'll also have arborists go through to evaluate the trees, their risk potential, to prioritize removal of hazard and high-risk trees from these segments as well. And these could be ones that are lit further out in the fall zone of this segment. And as you're driving down the road, you're exactly right. You do see a lot of tags on the trees. I don't have the exact count, but these trees fall into 3 categories, right? So the first category would be those that we've reached out to the property owner on private property and obtained consent for removing these trees. The second category would be ones that we've reached out to the tree warden and he has deemed an immediate hazard, which those you'll typically see an X on the tree that's been painted as well as a tag. And those ones are immediate hazards that he has deemed necessary to remove. And then the third category of trees that you'll see out there that are tagged are those that have been posted by the tree warden to go through the process. And basically the way that works is once it's been posted, the local community does have the opportunity to raise questions about these trees that are to be removed. And if needed, have a town hearing based on the posted tree that is in question. So I don't have a total number for you.
I'm sorry, the third category, posted because Eversource would like to get rid of them, or the tree warden wants to get rid of them?
So the ones that the tree warden would like to remove immediately are the ones that are an immediate hazard.
Right.
The ones that are posted are the ones that we have requested for removal, and the tree warden has reviewed them and has posted them as a removal, but not an immediate hazard.
Okay, So the tree warden would not necessarily in that third category be posting those trees, but in working with you with the plan that you're proposing, he's posting. But there is an opportunity for the public to discuss that.
That is correct.
When you say opportunity for the public to discuss or to question through a public hearing, is that the formal pure public hearing? Or is that?
Oh, so not necessarily PURA, but that is the public hearing that's set forth by the tree warden per the statutes. So once the tree warden posts it, typically you have 10 days in order for a community member to come forward and indicate that they do have an issue with the tree being removed. After that, the tree warden would then schedule a hearing, which the public would be invited to in order to discuss the removal of these trees.
Do you have to have an individual hearing for each tree or, I mean?
Each appeal.
So
It would be a collective meeting. We did that for High Street.
High Street, right.
yes.
Yeah, typically it has to be a property owner who has a tree on their property.
Correct.
You couldn't do it for the neighbor across the street. Couldn't say, okay, I want to save the tree that's on your property. It would have to be the property owner themselves, so. And based on what we did at High Street, where there were multiple individuals, we did one hearing.
Right.
Did a walk around, we did a hearing, et cetera. So, you know, that is different than a public hearing that we normally conduct as Board of Selectmen for within the town. You did hear the contention that our scenic road designation suggests that we have to have a public hearing. However, Attorney Barrett has rendered an opinion that this only applies to subdivision work.
Okay.
So.
The public hearing that some of the people who have concerns about this are asking for is different from the public hearing
Agreed.
about the posted trees.
It is, and so, call it public hearing, call it public forum, call it a meeting, whatever. It was my intention, and TJ and I have been working through this, and I think we've come to a reasonable accommodation that we will, you know, once, what's really gonna kick this off is once we get the project description and report, so I can share that with the residents who are concerned. And then no doubt there will probably be some additional questions coming from them beyond what I had asked. Some of them will be rhetorical as opposed to factual, but the opportunity, I think, exists for us to have, once that process has taken place, for us to have a meeting within, I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, so we don't have to post it, you know, in the newspaper, et cetera, that we'd have a hearing, and Eversource would be there to be able to answer questions and to defend the rationale for this project.
Yeah, I think because this is really helpful, and if I sound antagonistic, I'm not, I'm just trying, we are going to be asked about this.
Absolutely.
Matt will get the most asks, but some of us will too, and so I'm just trying to get information so I can intelligently answer why there might be a 40-foot pole versus a 35-foot pole. So
Also, to be very clear, too, we can pause the veg management work, but the capital work will
It's going
continue. The
forward.
poles and the wires are going to happen.
Right.
Because this is, as we've alluded to, and I think Matt has the information, what we're calling the fourth worst performing circuit in the entire state. So
Yes,
those
it is.
residents, roughly 400, 350, 400, have been continually experiencing outages in the last couple of years. So as a company, we don't want that to continue to happen.
Right.
The other thing we don't want to happen is to move forward with the project, not having some form of tree trimming, because investing $1.4 million and then having the trees come down and take the new infrastructure down just doesn't make any business sense, right? For the residents or us. And so we want the impact to be minimal as much as we can, but the project has to move forward just from a standpoint of,
That's an interesting fact, the fourth most problematic area.
yeah.
yeah, well, the shoreline.
In the state.
In the state.
Right.
And
So
it's
first,
because
let me
the
just say, let me just go on record as saying Eversource did not see your questions, ma'am, as antagonistic. You just want to know what's going on, just like everybody else.
And that
So we do understand that. We are members of the public here. We just want the best service for our customers because we are customers ourselves. And we really want to collaborate with all of you for you to get the understanding out there to the public that Eversource is not this big corporation is just going to come and do what they want. We want to work with you,
At the end of the
give you
day.
all the information explain the reasons why, because at the end of it all, there is a benefit to all of us if we put up better facilities to serve you so that you do not lose your electricity during storms and so on. Now, I do understand, we all do understand the scenic route, which we all would like to preserve. However, as you all know, if you have gardens and so on, sometimes vegetation and trees becomes unhealthy. And we need to make sure that we're doing our best, for want of a better word, to prune or extricate any dead trees that could provide not only a danger to our facilities, but to the public in general. We're willing to do so because in the interest of the best electrical service we can provide. And that goes in part to collaborating with you as the leadership of your town so that you can get the message out there for us that this is in the best interest of everyone. We have no desire to make anyone mad. We just want to do the best service we can.
Right, Barry, thank you for that. There's one other piece of this that I think is important to discuss. That circuit being the fourth worst circuit in the state of Connecticut is largely for a couple of reasons. One, it's a densely treed area, all right? Secondly, there is no survivability. There's no redundancy up in that area. This project also calls for being able to backfeed the folks on Great Hill and Long Hill Road because they will have two sources of power coming in. And that's why bare wire won't do it. Right. And again,
Yes, sir.
I'm way over my.
You're doing a great job.
No, you're doing a great job. You sound like me. I'm very impressed, actually.
And so this fits into a larger capital project that will include, over the next couple of years, will include survivability or sustainability to those up there that they don't enjoy today.
And
that's
so
correct.
One of the questions that the people asked was, why couldn't you just put the new wire on the old poles? But that's I think you explained it, that you just, if you're doing this, you have to put these new
Right, you have to beef up the
stronger poles
foundation.
in as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Is there
ma'am.
fiber in the community yet? Because they'll come knocking and there's no room for them right now.
No room.
And if you want to have room for them.
Yeah.
Our friends at Frontier won't give us the map, but
Oh.
the only place we know where they are definitely is when they need a underground permit.
Right.
So think about it, just that y'all explained. Y'all are very close to the coastline, right? So we're gonna feed you. It's pretty simple, even though it seems complicated. Electricity is layman, very layman. So we're gonna feed you, and we're gonna come down to the shoreline. Now, the fine gentleman just spoke about redundancy. When you're inland, there's way for you to bring in other circuits to link up to the existing circuits and provide back feeds. But when you're feeding out to the coast, it's like a lattice. Feed out to the coast, you're feeding out to water. There's no circuits out in the water to come back and create a back feed for you. So therefore, you got to think of it in terms of that. There's, just to get mentioned, there's no redundancy. There's no circuits out in the water for us to bring electricity back to you. So we need to figure out the best case scenario, not only to beef up what we have on the coastline, but how do we go about creating redundancy so that if we lose that lateral, there's a way for us to get electricity to you that way. A big part of it is beefing up those same circuits, because just like you mentioned in terms of the poles, in order for the poles to hold beefier facilities, the base of the pole itself needs to be stronger. Or not, the pole is just going to snap under the forces of nature, right? We also need to be able to withstand the weather when it comes in, higher winds, icing on those said cables, any kind of weather force that could create any kind of issues for our poles. We need to get thicker poles in order to be able to withstand those physical forces.
Great, thank you. All right, so just to recap here, the document is pretty close to publication.
Yeah, I think we
We
can.
should have an answer for you by the end of the day.
Yes.
Thank you. As soon as you do, we'll get that out into the community, and then we will set up a meeting, probably an evening meeting, which makes it easier for folks to get to allow for some interactions.
Probably hybrid, right?
More than likely hybrid. Might make sense to do it at the community center, so we'd have to schedule it over there. That's a bigger room than this one. And hope then within the next couple of weeks.
Have
Does that make sense?
you been getting a lot of contact
there are probably 4 households who have reached out about this. And this letter from the North Congregational Church is driven largely by the people who have contacted me.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, and-
Dale, do we have numbers as to how many abutters have given us permission? Or Stan, either of you?
I like to know how many properties are impacted.
Roughly 355 in the village.
350 and 4 people.
And the way the
355 house lots?
I believe that's the number of impacted customers
Okay.
along the entire scope of this portion of the project.
The scenic road nature would be that would be a subset. That's a subset of
Can I
that. That's
ask, I'm just naive to it. Is it a state or federally designated scenic road or town?
Town, is my understanding. So, and there was a specific reference in our charter, not charter, but the code that deals with scenic roads. And again, the town attorney has indicated that is related to subdivision or work on roads. So,
Yeah.
But it is advisory.
But we are willing to move forward with something like a public hearing. You can
Right.
call it a public hearing, public forum, or whatever it is. But that's what we want to do, is to have that meeting to satisfy the curiosity of those who are concerned.
Absolutely.
And I know
And we want to be cognizant of the sensitivity of the fact that whether it's state or federal, it's still a perceived beautification.
Yeah, I think just this meeting here was quite informational and,
more than you ever wanted to know.
No, not at all. I mean, you always hear from the concerned folks and, the outspoken folks you hear, but that's one side. I mean, you got regulations, you got reality.
You've got different entities sharing the polls. I mean, it's very interesting when you finally
And
get
you
it.
have,
Well, it's, they're facts, I mean, other than emotions.
and you have folks with competing interests here. There's at least one gentleman on Winterberry, which is off of Great Hill, who is, every time there's a storm event, I usually hear from him. And there are other folks from in that area that also are the ones that call first, call off often when service isn't
It's
restored.
hard to compete with the fact that it's the 4th worst in the state. I mean, what else is going on?
All right, and also please note, you may have seen in the documentation that we provided, there were 11 outages within the last 3 to 4 years in this area. Of those 11 outages, 1 was for our pole accident, which was a car hitting the pole, which cut the electricity. 1 was for failed equipment, and the other 9, all tree related. So trees have been our biggest issue out here with reliability. Right, and that would be branches falling, trees falling over, whatever the case may be. They're coming over onto the facilities and creating unreliable service. We really want to prevent that as a company.
One of the
for our
points that they seem to be hanging their hat on is dead trees or diseased trees versus healthy trees. So
Yes, sir.
I want to just get some of that information together.
Stanzer, floor is yours.
So one thing to remember, Barry's went over the change in impacts from storms in Connecticut. One of the largest things to remember is that, storms and winds just don't blow over dead trees. It's also living trees as well. In all the time that I've been in Connecticut, if you go out after Isaias or any of the larger events that we've had, you'll see a lot of live oaks, live maples, live hickories, structurally strong trees that were blown over during a storm or cracked during a storm or failed during a storm. So it's not just dead and diseased or hazardous trees that need to be removed, as we've already mentioned. It's also those living ones as well.
Thank you. And I think it's important to note, I think it might have been in the Shoreline Times article that I think came out this morning on that, right? Is that Eversource, as was mentioned earlier, meets with each of the property owners, goes out to talk to each of the property owners and identifies and lets them know what trees are being, what trees are targeted. And do they at that point have an option to say, no, don't do that tree?
Yes,
Yeah.
So.
yep, that's why I asked, do we have a number yet? Who's permissioned us, yay or nay?
That'd be
That would be
a really
helpful.
good number to have.
Yeah, very helpful. We don't have that compiled yet, or do we?
I don't have that on myself. I don't think that Dale has it currently. I don't know if he's able to speak on his line right now.
Yeah, but we can have that in hand when we come, we can give it to Matt. prior
Of
to-
course,
Okay,
but you're exactly right. Each property owner does have the right to refuse consent as well as give us consent. And all those trees that you do see tagged are either from the tree warden or from private property owners that have given us consent to remove those trees.
The distinction between the two of those would be helpful.
yep, we can outline that.
Consent versus
Yes,
tag.
yeah, that would be really
Yeah.
good. Well,
Okay.
thank you,
Well, listen,
everybody.
thank you all.
All right, thank you for your time. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity the floor to speak on this. If y'all have any more questions, feel free to reach out to TJ or Robin, and we will get you the answers that you need. We are here to serve, so please understand that. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
You got it.
Anything else before we leave?
I think we're good. Just as soon as you can get that document over, we can get the ball rolling, and we appreciate the holding off on the veg management until such time as we can at least give people an audience.
Okay, great. The
What was
audience
Barry's official role? Like,
director of electric operations for
Okay.
Easter, so
Okay.
he has 52 towns.
okay.
under his
And do you
purview.
represent all 169 towns?
Now, I have the same division. I have 52. We work out of 4 work centers, and TJ's got the lucky number of like 28 towns right now, so. It's a lot more work than you think. The number doesn't look so small, but we divide it in 3 across the street. There's Western, Central, and Eastern. So
You guys hate it when you get high winds like we had.
even, yeah, the outages, we get every outage alerted to our phone, over 100 customers impacted, so it was like boom, boom.
Piling in.
Fortunately, there wasn't so much along the shore. It was more inland. Yeah. But the document that you're looking for from us,
That'll
go just to the people
but
along the route, or how are you gonna
I'm gonna,
disseminate it?
what we're probably gonna do is we're gonna try to identify people on Great Hill, because it's the scenic road one that is drawing the most attention.
Okay,
And we'll probably send that out from my office, letting them know that we're gonna schedule a hearing, probably come up with a hearing date or forum date or meeting date, whatever you want to call it. And then they're welcome to attend either virtually or in person.
and the tree warden will be in
No,
attendance.
Yeah, Kevin will be there.
Yeah, I wondered where he was today.
I don't think.
Hiding behind the tree, no. Maybe he was on vacation, I don't know.
Kevin and I have been working closely.
Oh, I'm sure
together
you
on
have.
this,
I'm not
so,
He's usually there every meeting.
Great.
All right.
Nothing else from us? Are you all good?
Thank you.
Anytime you have any questions about infrastructure or anything, give us a call.
Okay,
Have to talk.
thank you.
What are the new poles made of?
There's still a composite wood pole.
So they don't look like metal
How can you
steel.
have a-
No, they're not metal. They basically look like traditional poles.
Fiberglass
Very
poles?
solid.
No, just
No.
basic, still, I think it's pressure treated, it has better durability, but it's still, it'll look like wood.
And there's some down at Sachem Head already.
Yes. Yep, so you can
So
take
you said
that.
road.
Aren't they on Sachem Head Road?
Yeah, there's some, apparently it's become the standard. When the pole goes down, they're being replaced with these new
Yep.
ones.
So I was at the far north and now I'll go to the far south so I can see that.
Or
Take
But
one.
it's-
go east, North Madison Road.
Oh, North Madison Road, okay.
Exactly
that's
to
right,
your
Did you do a
point
big
too.
project in Madison? Did you do?
Madison.
You did a project in Madison last year.
And Old Saybrook has a 3-year going too. A lot of the shoreline because of the winds. And
Yeah.
if you look at the trajectory, I've been here 40 years. You look at the trajectory of storms and it's changed.
Mhm.
You know, it certainly didn't always encompass this part of the state before, and more regularly we're getting hit down here.
I have 2 trees at the end of my property. I'd love you to post if you want to come by.
Take them down.
Yeah.
So you don't
I
have to
keep
do it?
waiting for them to go that way.
We hear that more often than
Yes,
you
I'd be thrilled.
All right, thank you again for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Nice to have met all of you.
We appreciate your time. and
Thank you to the folks on the screen too.
Whenever they come to trim the branches, I go right ahead.
I always try to get them to do it.
Yeah.
Matt, I gotta check out before the next agenda item.
Okay,
Sorry, everybody. See ya.
and this is the
Thanks.
fun part, huh?
No, this was all good. Good meeting. Thank you.
All right. Anything else under old business or new business? Public forum? I'm not sure there's anybody left from the public out there, right? Nope. All right. Item 18 is discuss and take possible action on appeals from residents in accordance with section 247-31, right of appeal, Article 7, elderly tax relief program. Executive session will be required. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. Let me try your minds. All in favor? Aye. Rebecca, you're welcome to stay on.
I'll come up.
No, you come up? Okay, thank you.
Can we-
We take a health break? Okay, is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Let me try your minds. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. In executive session, there were no motions made, no actions were taken, but as a result of the discussions on the elderly tax relief program, the board voted to approve 3. We denied 2, and we are awaiting additional information on another 3. So we'll move forward as planned. Anything further? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you. This is back to back.